there anything better in life than seeing your favorite wrestler hit their signature finishing move in a match? Not that I can think of, but I'm a very sad man. Like everything in the business, some finishes are good and some are not so good, but there is a story to tell behind each and every one of them. We've rounded up 10 of the best tales of move invention for your viewing pleasure and education. Just don't try any of them on any unsuspecting family members, alright? We don't want to get sued. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 origin stories behind famous wrestling finishers. Join us! Number 10. Tight Trouser Turmoil. Let's start with a story that's been told quite a fair bit in recent years, but it's worth repeating because of how damn funny it is. Prior to his current run with WWE, Drew McIntyre was a young superstar with big dreams and about half the overall muscle mass he has now. Those dreams came to an end when he was let go from the promotion in 2014, but not before he joined a little stable called 3MB. Alongside Heath Slater and Jinder Mahal, McIntyre would prance around pretending to be a rock star, all whilst wearing some very fetching leather trousers. These threads would end up changing the Scotsman's career when they inadvertently created the most over move in his arsenal. When attempting to go for a big boot whilst in costume, McIntyre realised that if he completed the move, his skin-tight trousers would split. To avoid showing his haggis and 2-veg off to the crowd, he kicked the other leg up and transitioned into a variation of the running dropkick. And thus, the Claymore was born, with McIntyre quickly incorporating it into his moveset as his trademark finishing blow. Number 9. Orton's Too Tall. Unlike a certain kilt-wearing sword swinger, Jon Moxley was all too eager to leave WWE and never come back. The current AEW star famously worked for the Fed under the name Dean Ambrose, where he was part of The Shield, a former WWE champion, and may or may not have got an injection into his bum on live TV. His finishing move there was called Dirty Deeds, a double underhook DDT that would become known as the Death Rider or Paradigm Shift once he left. However, this was not the first technique he used to put people away. As Ambrose, Moxley originally used a headlock driver as his finisher, still calling it Dirty Deeds. This was his move for a while until he came up against a certain apex predator. In Moxley's own words, taken from an interview he did with Fightful, he said, "I think I gave it to Randy Orton one time, who is someone with a significant height advantage on me. It was just awkward. I was like, that's it, I'm switching this up." After the match, backstage producer Joey Mercury suggested he use the double arm variation, and that was that. Number 8. Pilfered Party Trick. Love him or hate him, you cannot deny that Santino Marella was bloody hilarious. Actually, some people would deny that, so ignore everything I just said. Idiots. Part of Santino's comedic shtick was a finishing move called the Cobra, which involved putting a green sock that looked like a snake over his arm and then hitting people in the neck with it. This move, which was somehow only ever kicked out of once, came about when Anthony Corelli, the man behind the character, was out on the town one night. He saw someone at a bar do a trick where he could turn his arm into a snake-like puppet, which Corelli was very taken by. He got the man to show him how to do it and stored that information until a house show about 5 years later. I said, you know what, I'm going to try something in my comeback, Santino told the Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw podcast in 2022. And that something was the Cobra, and it got a great reaction from the fans in attendance. I mean, Santino would go on to nearly win the Royal Rumble with this move, lest we forget. Number 7. Trampoline! Few moves in wrestling are as unique and spectacular looking as AJ Styles' Styles Clash. The phenomenal one picks his opponents up so they're upside down, steps over their arms with his legs, and then slams them into the mat full force. It is a sight for sore eyes, and, well, sore everything to be honest. I can think of about 1,000 other moves I would rather take than this one. Styles can trace the lineage of his most famous weapon back to his childhood days, and to something we all did as wrestling crazy kids, pretending to fight your friends on the trampoline. My little brother was trying to powerbomb his buddy on the trampoline, he told ITN Wrestling in 2021. He's dangling upside down and I go, oh, and I walked over there and my little brother took the first ever Styles Clash on a trampoline. The move has been with Styles ever since and has appeared during most of his greatest matches and moments in the squared circle. Number 6. Manga come to life. The shooting star press has been used by many different wrestlers over the years in various different forms. Matt Sydal used it to great effect when he was in WWE as Evan Bourne. Pac added a little twist onto his to make the Black Arrow, and Billy Kidman invented a variation where he almost killed himself every single time he did it. The stunning aerial move's origins lie in Japan, and with one of the country's greatest ever talents, Jushin Thunder Liger, who started using it before he even took that name on, with his first recorded appearance happening in 1987. How he wasn't burned as a witch, I do not know. Keiichi Yamada, the man under the iconic mask, came up with the move when he was flicking through a copy of a manga called Fist of the North Star. Yamada saw the unique offense of the book's heroes and decided to try and replicate it in real life. I would tell you which character he was emulating, but since I'm not a smelly nerd and I don't read comic books, I can't. No offense, Mr. Liger. Love your work. Number 5. Killer inspiration. Few moves are as tied to one wrestler as the pedigree is to Hunter Hearst Helmsley. The finisher's name is a throwback to Triple H's time as a snooty aristocrat who would brag that his heritage was vastly superior to anyone else's. The pedigree quickly got over as a destroyer, not least because people used to take it without putting their hands up, which must have sucked to high heaven. The game told Fox Sports in 2019 that his patented big move owed a debt to the man who trained him, the mighty Killer Kowalski. Kowalski used to do a spot where he would put a guy's head between his knees and would jump up and kinda just jar their neck, he said. I thought, well, if you held the guy's arms, it would very clearly be a pile driver, so it started out as that. Had Trips not borrowed this from his mentor, then his career might have looked very different, especially when you consider that his initial WWE finishing move was something not too dissimilar to the RKO. Hey, maybe in an alternative timeline it was actually Randy Orton who married Stephanie McMahon? Number 4. Lesnar Baiting. This may shock you considering today he's more squeaky clean than a germophobic rubber duck, but back in the early days of his career, John Cena was a bit of a naughty boy. The Doctor of Thugonomics, as he was known at the time, was more of a tweener in his rookie years, making rude comments about his fellow wrestlers that would not be acceptable for the voice of Ferdinand the Bull these days. Cena's first pay-per-view world title match was against Brock Lesnar at Backlash 2003, and as was the style at the time, the Beast came under fire from John and his wicked tongue. He took Lesnar's F5 finisher and made it his own, calling his version of the Fireman's Carry Slam the FU. That's nearly a swear. How's he allowed to say that? Even after his feud with Lesnar was over, Cena's FU stuck around, even during his rise to the top of the card. When WWE went PG in 2008, they decided that they probably shouldn't have their top star using a move that alluded to a curse word, and so the finisher's name was changed to the Attitude Adjustments. Number 3. Who did it first? In the 1990s, you had two options when it came to submission finisher-based wrestlers, Sting in WCW or Bret Hart in WWE. Okay, there were obviously way more than two people using submissions at the time, but these are the only two relevant to this list. Both Hall of Famers utilized the exact same finishing hold, an alteration to the Boston Crab known as the Scorpion Deathlock or the Sharpshooter, depending on who was doing it. If WWE lore is to be believed, Hart was taught the move by his father Stu, but in reality, it was Conan who showed the Hitman how to do it in the dressing room before a show. Sting had actually been using the finisher before the pink and black attack, so he must have been the one to invent it, right? Wrong! The answer to who did it first is actually neither of them, as the lock was innovated in Japan by the legendary Riki Choshu. Choshu named the move the Sasori Gatami, and as Sasori is Japanese for scorpion, this is where its Western name came from. So there you have it, this argument has been solved once and for all. You're welcome. Number 2, it started with a rib. The Rock was so gifted as a performer that it really didn't matter that much what he did in the ring. It got over because the man simply pissed charisma. This is reflected in the fact that one of his finishing moves was a running elbow drop where he stopped running before he hit the other person. I mean, what's the point in building up all that momentum if you're just gonna stop, Rocky? Makes no sense. It should come as no surprise that a move so ridiculous started out life as a prank between the Brahma Bull and the rest of the locker room. He began using the ludicrous spot to try and make his opponents break character, with a particular focus on The Undertaker. But then, as Rock started to get more and more over, so too did the move. move. Over time, the People's Elbow graduated from silly house show touch to signature setup to match-ending move. This is how the Great One ended the year-plus world title reign of CM Punk in 2013, and it started off as a gag. Despite looking as effective as a pair of scissors made out of candy floss, the People's Elbow is the most electrifying move in sports entertainment. If you smell la 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 la. Number 1, a happy accident. It's sometimes a bit hard to think of a DDT as a finisher these days, considering everyone and their mum does it multiple times a match without getting the win, but back in the day, it was feared and protected. This cranium-crushing crescendo was the brainchild of one of the all-time greats, Jake the Snake Roberts, who got it over to a huge degree during his time in the World Wrestling Federation. So I guess Roberts used his famous intellect to come up with such a popular move, eh? Nope, it came about because he fell over one day. According to the man himself, Roberts was grappling with another wrestler when he caught the guy in a front face lock. The Snake's opponent accidentally stepped on his foot, causing both men to tumble to the floor with the face lock still applied. In a total fluke of a moment, the DDT had just been invented. Whether this story is 100% true or not, it's nice to think that such an iconic part of the wrestling language came about completely by mistake. So there you go, just because something was an accident doesn't mean that it can't be useful. If only my parents said the same about me.